Once upon a time, in a cozy little town called Hollybright, lived a small squirrel named Squeaky. Hollybright was famous for one thing, the most spectacular Christmas celebration in the entire forest. Every year, the animals would gather for the great Christmas light-up, where the tallest fir tree in the town square would be decorated with 1,000 sparkling lights. But this year, something was terribly wrong. A week before Christmas, a big, grumpy badger named Barnaby moved into a cave right next to the town square. Barnaby hated noise, he hated bright lights, and most of all, he hated Christmas. Bah, humbug, he'd grumble, slamming his door shut whenever he heard a Christmas carol. Squeaky and his best friends, a cheerful rabbit named Rosie and a wise old owl named Professor Hoot, were worried. How can we have the great Christmas light up with grumpy Mr. Barnaby right there? Rosie sighed, her long ears drooping. He'll unplug all the lights. Squeaky chattered, his tail twitching with anxiety. Professor Hoot adjusted his spectacles. Every problem has a solution. We just need to find the right one. Perhaps we need to understand why Mr. Barnaby is so grumpy. So, the three friends decided to investigate. Their mission, Operation Christmas Cheer. The next day, Squeaky tiptoed to Barnaby's cave, carrying a small, beautifully wrapped gift. A jar of his grandma's famous acorn butter. He knocked gently on the big wooden door. The door creaked open just a crack, and one of Barnaby's beady eyes peered out. "What do you want?" he growled. Hello, Mr. Barnaby," Squeaky stammered. We wanted to welcome you to Hollybright. I brought you some acorn butter." Barnaby just grunted, snatched the jar, and slammed the door. Squeaky's shoulders slumped. Well, that didn't work, he told his friends later. Next, it was Rosie's turn. She gathered the sweetest, juiciest winter carrots from her garden and arranged them in a lovely basket. She hopped over to the cave and left the basket by the door with a note that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." But when she checked later, the basket was gone, and there was no thank you, no smile, nothing. "He's a tough nut to crack," Professor Hoot observed, ruffling his feathers. "Kindness and gifts aren't working. We need a different approach. We need to find out his story." That night, Professor Hoot flew silently to the branch of a tree overlooking Barnaby's cave. He waited and watched. Late into the night, he saw Barnaby sitting alone by his small fireplace, looking at an old faded photograph. The old badger looked sad. The next morning, Professor Hoot gathered Squeaky and Rosie. "I think I know what the problem is," he said softly. "I believe Mr. Barnaby isn't grumpy. I believe he's lonely." "Lonely?" Rosie asked, her nose twitching. "But why would he be so mean to us?" "Sometimes," Professor Hoot explained wisely, "when people feel very sad and alone, they build a wall around themselves to keep from getting hurt more. His grumpiness is his wall." A new plan was formed. This wasn't about just giving gifts. It was about sharing the true spirit of Christmas. On Christmas Eve, the entire town of Hollybright was quiet. There were no carols, no laughter, no preparations for the light-up inside his cave. Barnaby peeked out his window, confused. "What's going on?" he mumbled to himself. "Where are all those annoying lights and that dreadful singing?" Just then, he heard a soft knock on his door. He opened it to find Squeaky, Rosie, and Professor Hoot standing there. But this time, they weren't alone. Behind them stood all the animals of Hollybright, each holding a single unlit candle. "Mr. Barnaby," Squeaky said bravely, his voice clear. "We know you don't like all the big, bright lights. And we realize that Christmas isn't just about a big show." Rosie stepped forward. "Christmas is about being together. And you're part of our town now. We don't want you to be alone." Professor Hoot held out a single candle to the badger. "We cancelled the great Christmas light-up. Instead, we were hoping you'd join us. We can't have a celebration if one of our neighbors is left out in the cold." Barnaby looked at the sea of friendly faces, each one holding a candle, waiting for him. He looked at the little candle being offered to him. His tough, grumpy exterior began to crumble. A tear rolled down his furry cheek and splashed onto the snow. He took the candle with a trembling paw. I haven't celebrated Christmas in a very long time," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Not since I was a little badger. I lost my family a long time ago, and the holiday just made me miss them more. Squeaky put a small paw on Barnaby's arm. You have a family now, he said softly. You have us. Slowly, Barnaby stepped out of his cave. The animals made a path for him as they all walked to the town square. There was no giant bright tree this year. Instead, they all stood in a large circle, their candles casting a warm, gentle glow on the new fallen snow. One by one, they started to sing, not loudly, but softly. They sang Silent Night, and Barnaby, holding his candle, sang along with them, his deep voice joining the chorus. In the soft candlelight, surrounded by his new friends, Barnaby the Badger smiled for the first time in a very, very long time. It wasn't a big, flashy Christmas, but it was the best one Holly Bright had ever had. They learned that the brightest light of Christmas doesn't come from 1,000 sparkling bulbs, but from the warmth of kindness and the glow of friendship. And from that year on, Barnaby never spent another Christmas alone. In fact, he became the official keeper of the Holly Bright Christmas spirit, always reminding everyone that the greatest gift of all is simply being together.